You may have heard of Dave the Diver. This was a very popular indie game that had to do with exploring the ocean. Well, this game, Porgy, is not only better than Dave the Diver in almost every way, but it also comes with 49 other games as a part of the UFO 50 collection. When I reviewed Dave the Diver, I had a lot of fun with it at first, but then I quickly grew bored, and the main reason is this. First of all, there was a lot of bloat that happened in the game that really was not necessary. It overstays its welcome without adding anything super substantial. But two, and most importantly, at the start of the game, you have this really rewarding press your luck dynamic. You're diving underwater, you've got limited oxygen, you're trying to grab as many resources as you can, and you need to get back out because if you die, you lose everything that you've gathered. So how much can you gather before time runs out? It's a really fun mechanic, but later on in the game, that more or less gets invalidated by all of the shenanigans and power-ups that go on. Porgy has none of that. You are the character Vishni, and you are a marine biologist who is trying to investigate why the fish are acting so aggressively underwater. Now, at first, it feels like you really are a scientist. Your stun torpedoes are not very effective. They move in this really weird trajectory, so it's hard to defeat enemies. They take several hits. They move in a lot of really annoying ways, and even when you quote-unquote defeat them, they just turn into a docile version of themselves. So you would think that the game really isn't about combat. It's more about avoidance, which is true for the most part, but then, holy cow, you start to get some really crazy power-ups like missiles and ballistic guns, and you can even drop bombs at a certain point. More on that later. I might even argue that Porgy has some of the best boss fights I have encountered in a very long time. These things are meaty with a lot of HP. They're very tricky to deal with in terms of their size, the way they move and rush at you and throw all sorts of obstacles your way, and they also can assault you out of nowhere. So as you are going about your day exploring the ocean, you might just get an encounter with a shark. In fact, that shark can spawn near the starting area, so you are very likely to encounter Lamia very quickly on, and you will quickly realize just how difficult the game can be, but in a really fun and rewarding way. You start the game off with a low amount of fuel, but as you continue to pick up these canisters and redeem them above the water, you will increase the amount of time you can stay down below, which is in turn going to allow you to explore deeper parts of the ocean. There is a ton of exploration in this game, and it might be some of my favorite in a long time because there's not a ton of different paths that can overwhelm you, and it's not randomly generated. You do get a sense of the ocean the more you explore it, and yet there are a ton of branching paths. It's actually crazy how many power-ups are hidden just in the starting initial area, and heaven forbid you start to look for more things down in the lower, darker depths. There is a ton of things to discover, and as you find certain power-ups, you can equip them, which can make your life a lot easier. The weapons I described earlier are among them, but there's also other power-ups too, like being able to equip a shovel. This makes your dash attack also dig through dirt. The dash attack, by the way, takes up a decent chunk of your oxygen, but it's really good for dodging enemies, and that shovel in particular also turns it into attack, which is very, very helpful. As you defeat bosses, you gain certain powers. The more bosses you defeat, the more items you can equip, which allows you to have a lot more flexibility in your explorations, and that's ultimately what the game is. You are exploring, you are trying to get a sense of the lay of the land, and you are doing your best to grab new items and find different pathways. You need to be careful though, because not only can you run out of oxygen when you're grabbing items, but there's also little clownfish that can show up near sea anemies. These things are among my favorite things in the game. They are only there to steal your items away from you. Now, if you beat the clownfish, you can easily recover your item. In fact, I've never actually seen it permanently disappear. I don't even know if it's possible for that to happen, but still, it's really funny to have to deal with these little guys as you're moving around the water. What's less funny, however, is due to the way the game is designed, a lot of the power-ups you find are just kind of worthless because you can never really justify equipping them. Let me give you a quick example. When you get missiles or bombs, there are certain dirt paths that you can blow up permanently, which is also a key part of the game. The damage that you deal to bosses, if you are able to escape them and go right up to the surface to save the game, the damage you deal to them will stick around permanently. So you can actually whittle away a shark over time, or during your escape, you land a few pot shots off. Well, those will matter later on, which I think is a really cool mechanic. So clearly the designers had this idea that certain things you do to the environment will be permanent and will stick around. So why is that not the case for the shovel dirt or for the ballistic targets? Because of this, you kind of always want to have these on hand. You can give up the shovel if you know that you're not going to take those pathways, but the ballistic weapon is already a pretty good power-up, so it's really hard to justify taking it off, which is a shame because I actually think that having the longer range on your baseline weapon and also being able to free up your equipment slots for other fun things would have been a really great option. It's especially worse in the final areas of the game where, of course, you are very far away from the surface surface, so you are very much on a clock in terms of what you're able to grab and the pathways you're able to take. I, for the life of me, cannot understand why the ballistic items are down there. I can understand encouraging different pathways to have shovels and whatnot, but again, I just really felt like I was boxed out of a lot of cool equipment combinations that weren't really possible, especially because the darkest depths already require a hard item slot of the light to even be able to navigate down there. Now's a good time to say too that you basically don't get more oxygen. Yes, you can get a few drops here and there for defeating enemies, but they're very low odds. I want to say it's 5%, 1 out of 20, because I can kill quite a few things and still not see any extra oxygen. So there's really a lot of stress that goes down, and in fact, I think that the game could have been just slightly more generous with those drops, because you can know pretty quickly if you're not going to be able to make it all the way up top, so you just end up restarting the game and feeling really frustrated. The only way to warp back to the surface is to kill a boss, and those don't respawn. Once you get rid of them, they're gone forever. I could see a world where maybe speedrunners leave a little bit of HP on a boss so that they can quickly go back up to the surface and be able to save their progress, but it's really frustrating for a casual player who's just trying to get fun items and equipment and feeling like they're boxed out by those game decisions. Finally, if I could make one last change to the game, I would say make the oxygen drops a little more plentiful, at least in the darkest depths of the ocean. Those are pretty tough enemies, and of course, in the final area, you're going to want the oxygen the most. It's like exponential how much more valuable oxygen gets down there. It would have been really easy to program those difficult enemies to spawn the oxygen just a little bit more. Still, even with the frustrations, Porgy is an extremely fun time. I highly recommend it. This has been a standout on UFO 50 in terms of the games I've played so far, and I'm not even halfway done with the game. I love the expressions that Vishni gets. I think it was a really great choice to have her give a little bit of dialogue here and there with some fun expressions on her face. I love being able to get her profile every time you are departing in the ocean. It really puts it into your head that, yeah, you are playing as this character in this cute little submarine. You are doing your best to solve the mystery, and I feel like the bosses were so thrilling and spectacular that that in itself is worth the price of admission, let alone the amazing exploration gameplay of this Metroidvania. I'll link my review to Dave the Diver, but again, just play UFO 50. It has 49 other games with it for only $5 more. How can you beat it? You can also find canisters that will increase the range of your torpedoes, which get even stronger if you're using the short range versions, and you can also get little fish eggs. If you find the mom in the ocean and deposit them, for every 5, you'll get a little partner who helps you out tremendously. It's so much fun.